This is a fitting Sunday in light of our readings to reflect on two questions. One is, has there been a time in your life that you are aware that prayer made the difference, whether it was your own prayer or the support of prayer that you received? Has there been a time in your life that you are aware that prayer made the difference? The second question is this, also in light of our scriptures. Are you still waiting for prayer to make the difference? Is your experience of persevering in prayer somewhat like that of Moses, who sees he needs to have his arms held up as he appeals to God for victory? There can be times in our lives when we wonder who's getting the better of the fight. This is what's occurring in the first reading as the Israelites are in their period of wandering in the wilderness, which was also the time during which their relationship with the Lord was being forged, their covenant bond, and they were beset by the Amalekites, another people who felt threatened by the passage of the Israelites through their territory. And so a battle ensues all day long. Moses seeks to offer the support of prayer and be a sign with his arms raised. But it's a long battle. They give him a rock so he can at least sit, but he's got to hold his arms up. And he's getting too tired, so Aaron and Hur hold his arms up for him. There can be times in our lives like that which Moses experienced, where we don't seem to be getting the better of the fight. And in experiences like that, what can happen in our relationship with God? At the end of the gospel, Jesus asks his disciples, but when the Son of Man returns, will he find any faith on earth? Or will the experience that we just keep waiting for prayer to make the difference cause the faithful to simply give up? What does it mean to have persevering faith and perseverance in the living of the Christian life? At the heart, in the second reading, there's a message from St. Paul to Timothy that supports the gift of the Word of God, always present among us, ever proclaimed in the church, that is inspired by God and can feed our souls to keep us going. In the course of my time here, I celebrated a funeral mass. A man passed away, and I was talking to his widow. These people have been parishioners at St. Joseph's for many, many decades. And this woman was talking about her experience of wanting to learn more about the Bible, but she was afraid that Father Snyder, who was the pastor of St. Joseph's at that time, would find out and she'd be in trouble because she's Catholic. And it wasn't, really encouraged in the church at that time for individual Catholics to be reading the Bible on their own and studying it apart from the guidance of the church. Now, she may have been exaggerating, but that was a tenor of the times. Studying the Bible was for Protestants, and Catholics distinguished themselves from Protestants by knowing that the Bible was important. But in my family, we had a nice big one, family Bible. It was under one side of the couch. On a shelf under an end table, there was the Bible. When I was little, I used to look through it because I liked the paintings, those kind of plates that are in the Bible of oil paintings and pictures, and in the back there was a glossary of names, and I would look up my name, David, and see that it meant beloved. But she persevered. She went to this little Bible class and studied the Word of God because she was hungry for it. The Scriptures are food for our souls. And a great lesson in the Gospel of Luke that we hear proclaimed is the lesson of prayer. And the Gospel's very frank about it, recognizing that in our life of faith we can feel like we're in an ongoing fight. Who is ultimately going to win? Will God's love ultimately be triumphant? And we're called on the one hand to reflect and to be thankful, recognizing that prayer makes the difference in our lives, our own prayer and the support of prayer, and at the same time that it can be a challenge to persevere in prayer, to persevere in the Christian life. I was reading our bulletin, and there's a message from Archbishop Laurie about, you may be aware that an election is coming up. It's only been in the news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years. And Archbishop Laurie writes about his own effort as a persevering shepherd. He says he gets letters from people who want him to tell people how to vote, and then he also gets letters from people telling him he shouldn't say anything at all about anything. Just stay out completely. What is a persevering shepherd to do? The gospel is about a widow, a vulnerable person seeking justice. And she's banging on the door. And she bangs and bangs until the unjust judge finally says, let me take care of this lady before she punches me in the face. That's the literal meaning. The Greek translation, the Greek of the original Gospel of Luke uses a boxing term that means to get punched under the eye. Let me give her what she wants before she punches me in the eye, and I'll be done with her. She persevered. She was a vulnerable person seeking justice. She was able to knock. Those people are in our midst. And there are also people in our midst who seek justice but aren't able to knock. They need somebody to persevere for them. I was reading this little snippet about the church's help to Catholics as any time we approach an election, but this is ongoing. It's not just because next month. This is the life of the church. When morally flawed laws already exist, prudential judgment is needed to determine how to do what is possible to restore justice, even if partially or gradually, without ever abandoning a moral commitment to full protection for all human life, from conception to natural death. We do what we can where we can, but within we have a commitment to persevere, to keep struggling. But there are other more personal and more intimate examples of what it means to be supported in prayer by our neighbors. I think of the cancer support group that meets in the chapel. Those are people holding each other's arms up to God. That's what that is. People who have loved ones who are sick or suffering, or they're aware that their friends are, and they gather together in the chapel to hold up each other's arms to God, to support one another. Jesus is teaching his disciples about perseverance in prayer because he's warning them that it's going to be tough. In the previous verses of chapter 17, he tells them, times will come when you will long for one of the days of the Son of Man, but it won't come. The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected. But then suddenly there he'll be, and one will be taken and one will be left. Not easy to get our heads around what Jesus means, this mystery of God and how God works, how we can pray and pray and pray, and then suddenly, there it is. And we realize that prayer has made the difference. And he instructs his disciples about what it's going to mean for them to keep going when he is no longer physically present to them. Pray without ceasing. Keep going. Jesus does not compare God to an unjust judge. Jesus contrasts God with the unjust judge. A God who is generous, loving, ever present, reaching out to us even when we struggle or find that maybe we're not getting the better of the fight. May we here be a community in which brothers and sisters help each other to hold their arms up to God, recognizing that all of us have needs for God's help, needs for God's mercy and strength, and that we can be of assistance to one another. And may we also persevere in the struggle for justice, for all, for the vulnerable, for those who can knock and for those who can't. And let this be inspired by the Word of God in our relationship with the God who is love in prayer.